Well, here we are. Welcome to my brain. Sorry it's such a mess. It's just, with everything that's happened in the show lately, there's just a lot to unpack here. Enough that it's probably going to take like 2 or 3 weeks to get through all of it. Steven Universe is a show that has always had really great visual continuity. Like, obviously I'm not saying that there hasn't been art evolution over the years, or that there isn't any variety from one border to the next, because that's definitely not true. But specific details in this show, except in the cases of animation errors, are consistent from episode to episode. If a character looks different from one episode to the next, they don't look so different that they don't look like the same character drawn by 2 different artists. Characters in this show are never so off-model that they look like completely different characters, and specific details are consistent from episode to episode. The number of facets on somebody's gem, for example, or the rough amount of space on their body that their gem takes up, or their hair color, or their general body type, their general height in relation to other characters, stuff like that tends to be consistent. So much so that purely using visual cues, very early on in the show, people were able to guess that Garnet was a fusion based only on that visual consistency. People noticed that Garnet had 2 gemstones, something that no non-fusion gem had ever been shown to have. That, coupled with the fact that despite the fact that her 2 gems were round, they still looked different from one another, convinced people that she was a fusion, and they were right. They were right about those observations that only could have been made if the visual continuity in this show was adhered to, if the specific visual details in this show were consistent. I say all of this because in the most recently aired new episode, we got probably the biggest twist reveal. Strike, that is not probably the biggest twist reveal. It is definitely the biggest twist reveal in this show so far. That Rose Quartz was, in fact, Pink Diamond all along. And I want to be clear, it's not as if this reveal makes no sense in the context of the narrative. If it didn't make sense in the context of the narrative, people wouldn't have come up with the theory in the first place. I'm also not saying that this couldn't eventually turn out to be the best thing that's ever happened to the show, narratively speaking. I don't think it's going to, but it definitely could. But what I am saying is that this reveal makes no sense from a visual standpoint. I am not even going to get into the stuff that the crew has said outside of the show. Even though I'm someone who claims not to take stuff that the crew says seriously, even though I claim to be someone who only cares about the continuity of what makes it into the series itself, I have put a lot of stock into some of the statements the crew has said, and I probably shouldn't have done that. So I'm going to ignore all of that, and I'm just going to talk about stuff in the show itself, the continuity of the show itself, specifically the visual continuity. And I'm going to start with what is going to be the specific focus of this episode. That being just the episodes in which we have actually seen Pink Diamond, in more than just a silhouette. And just to be super fair to the crew, I'm not even going to cite the fact that even if there is a logical in-universe reason for Pink Diamond's mural to look so different than her actual design, it is still an example of the crew retconning the visuals of the show. I'm just going to set that off to the side and not mention it again and just focus on specific times that we have actually seen Pink Diamond, the actual Pink Diamond, in an episode. Which leaves us with 2 episodes that I'm going to be examining today. Jungle Moon and, of course, A Single Pale Rose. I'm going to freely admit, as much as I had come not to like the Rose's Pink Diamond theory by the time that Jungle Moon rolled around, as much as I was convinced that it wasn't true, there was still a part of me that wondered. There was still a part of me that was waiting with bated breath to finally get a look at Pink Diamond, so that I could know for sure. And continuing this pattern of being entirely upfront with you guys, it was that first shot of Pink Diamond in Jungle Moon that finally convinced me that she could not possibly be Rose Quartz. Not only was her gem oriented a different way than Rose's, not only did it appear to be a different color from Rose's, there was a specific and distinct visual detail which, once and for all, proved that they could not be the same gem. Pink Diamond's lack of a band surrounding the facets of her gem. Rose, like many other gems, has a band around the facets of her gem. You can see it on Steven. It is definitely there. Just for reference, you can see the same band around most of the other gems that we have seen in the show. It's what makes gems like Ruby's gem, Sapphire's gem, and Amethyst's gem all look perfectly round, despite the fact that they wouldn't look perfectly round. And I don't just mean that we've seen them when those characters were poofed. We see them on their character designs as well. And we can see that Steven has one, and therefore Rose also had one. Pink Diamond does not. And yet, during that scene in A Single Pale Rose, not only does Rose go from having a band around the facets in her gem to not having one between frames in a single shot when she shapeshifts from Rose into Pink Diamond, she also goes from not having one back to having one after we see her again later once she's been poofed. So it's not as if the crew didn't know that that band was there. It's not as if they're retconning the band out of existence. They know it's there. They just purposefully didn't animate it on Pink Diamond's animation model. This was, without a doubt, a deliberate attempt to trick the fans of the show and prevent them from confirming this theory before the crew was ready to reveal this twist. To use the Garnet reveal as an example again, this is like if the crew had not planned to reveal the truth about Garnet so early in the series, and so had drawn out the reveal for several years. This is as if, for example, Garnet had left the show for a while to be replaced by Ruby and Sapphire without the narrative of the show or anyone involved with the show ever once confirming that Ruby and Sapphire were Garnet's components, and without us getting a look at either of their gemstones, at least not right away. Naturally, people in the fandom would have theorized that these two gems were Garnet's components. That's just the kind of people that people in the Steven Universe fandom are. Now imagine that that's the state of the show. Garnet is nowhere to be seen. We have Ruby and Sapphire, but we don't know what their gems look like, and there have been theories floating around for years that Ruby and Sapphire are Garnet's components. Now let's say years after the first time that is theorized, we finally see their gemstones, and either they're on their backs, for example, rather than their hands. Or, just for example, again, one or both of them is square-shaped instead of round. That would naturally put that theory to rest. Suddenly, the fandom would no longer think that Ruby and Sapphire are Garnet's component gems, and they'd start looking for other candidates. Now let's say that just a few episodes later, Ruby and Sapphire fused into Garnet. And magically, despite the fact that we have never seen any other gem exhibit this ability, when they fuse into Garnet, their gemstones move from their backs onto their hands, which is analogous to Rose being able to turn her gemstone inexplicably. Or, again, with us never having seen any other gem exhibit this ability, the one of them which had a square gem rather than a round one is able to transform it into a round gem when they fuse. This, of course, being analogous to Rose being able to make that band appear and disappear between shots. Obviously, people would be disappointed by that. Obviously, people would feel deceived. Even though the reveal would still have the same narrative significance, maybe even more so, because we would have gotten to know Ruby and Sapphire better first, and so the weight of their relationship would have been even stronger. People would feel deceived. And rightfully so. That's about where I'm at right now. I will repeat what I said at the beginning of this video. In principle, I am okay with this reveal. In principle, despite the fact that I don't particularly like it, I am still looking forward to seeing how the series goes forward with this reveal being true. And I'm not even going to insist that it doesn't make sense from a narrative standpoint. But at this point, it should be obvious that it does not make sense from a visual standpoint, and that this level of visual continuity is not in keeping with the typical high standards of this show. It really comes across as the crew wanted people to be surprised by this twist, so they purposefully ignored visual continuity in order to throw us off track. Obviously, this isn't the end of the world, or even the end of this show, but it does make me worry that this has set a precedent now, and that from this point forward, the crew is not going to care as much about the visual continuity of the show. And as someone who loves theorizing about this show, and has kind of made a career out of it, that has me a little bit worried. I am genuinely worried that the crew has decided that it's okay for them to ignore an aspect of this show that I genuinely adored. And obviously, the crew doesn't owe me anything. If they want to stop caring about their visual continuity, that's their right, but I don't have to like it. And I am certainly not going to shy away from criticizing that as a decision or even potential decision just because people like the reveal, or people disagree with me, or people think that I'm salty for my theories being wrong. Because even assuming that all of those things are 100% true, this is still a valid criticism. It is a valid criticism to say that if the crew stops worrying about the visual continuity of the show, it will be a mistake. But the visual continuity isn't even all of the ways that this reveal doesn't make sense within the continuity of the show. There are actual narrative details that don't really make sense either, which is what I intend to talk about in next week's video. I don't even feel like I have to ask you guys what your opinion is on everything that I've said in this video, because honestly, everybody feels differently about this, and so I am sure you guys are going to tell me your opinion one way or another. But I'm still going to ask, what do you guys think about anything that I've said in this video? Maybe you think I'm taking the visual continuity too seriously. If so, let me know in the comment section down below or over on my Discord. Link in the description. Either way though, this has been AJ22 and I will talk to you guys later.